All right, welcome back. So this is part 2 of the second lecture for Unit 1 for the Design 1 class. In this lecture, I'm just covering the assignments a little bit more clearly. Now, they're written up in the assignment description, but I also wanted to just kind of show you. So like when we last talked, I said about the sketchbook assignment that you do 2 pages where you're just filling them with all these different kinds of textures, just like I demoed on the last newsprint page. And then after that, you do 4 pages where you have 6 boxes on each page. 6 boxes, right? For page 1, 2, 3, and on the 4th one, you have 6 boxes, but you don't have to do all 6 boxes if you don't want to. You only have to do 4. No, actually, you only have to do 2 because you need to get to 20. So we need to have 20 boxes filled, each one with an idea, some texture idea that came out of all of this process. The other thing I said is that 10 of them should try to be really consistent, like a whole idea, where it's just one idea done, and then 10 of them should be layered, where they have multiple ideas kind of layered on top of each other. Okay, once you've done the sketchbook exercise or sketchbook work, you're then ready to do the homework. The homework is on an 11 by 14 piece of Bristol board, inches by 14 inches, and you have a grid of 3 by 4. 1, 2, 3. This one's going to be a little bit bigger. 3 by 4, and these are 3-inch boxes. One, 3, 4. You'll have a little bit of extra space so you can have the border at the bottom of the page a little bit bigger. How much you space between this way and that way versus how much you space at the edge is up to you. You get to decide, but I would strongly recommend that it be consistent, that this space here be exactly the same as that space, and that also be exactly the same as that space. The more consistent, the better. But if you want them tightly spaced, you can have that, like only have half an inch between them, or even a quarter of an inch between them. Or if you want something a little bit wider, you can have that as well. That's up to you to decide, okay? Depending on how you feel it works as a composition. And all you have to do from here is come up with, this gives you 12 different texts, 12 different boxes. And in those boxes, you need 12 different texture / pattern / mark making systems that you developed in your sketchbook assignment. You need to reproduce them here. Now you can do this 2 ways. One is you could draw these boxes directly on the Bristol board and then draw the textures and patterns directly on, or you can draw them on separate pieces of paper, like on sketchbook paper, and then cut and paste them directly on, okay? So, hold on one thing. So here's one of the problems or things you need to think about with this assignment, which is you need to think about where you're going to be putting your textures, right? Like which ones are going to be textures that have a lot of attention to them? Like which ones are going to be the ones, where are you going to place the ones that have a whole lot of value? Maybe decide you really want this one to be there in that section because it's got a lot of activity and a lot of value. You think it's a really interesting texture, whereas in this spot right here, you want a much more quiet texture. You need to think about where you place each thing and how they're going to create an overall effect, how they're going to lead our eye to certain places and make us think, oh yeah, that's a really good one. That's one I want to look at. And how it's going to move our eye throughout the whole page, right? So that means we need to think about issues of unity and hierarchy / emphasis. So remember earlier I spoke about how you probably don't want to have some that only have graphite on them, and then a bunch of others that have all different kinds of pen on them. And one of the reasons for that is because of unity, right? If you really break the unity by having some that are only graphite, and some that are only ballpoint, and some that are only Sharpie, they might look too different from each other. So we need to think about unity, but we also need to think about contrast. So we want them all to work together as a whole, but they need to make distinct contrasts from each other. Each one needs to look like a different texture, but they need to make contrasts of texture and, most importantly, of value. So some need to be darker and some need to be lighter. And then because of those differences, they're going to make us feel like certain locations in this grid, right? And that's what it is. This is a grid arrangement, right? Some of these locations in the grid are more important or more interesting than others, and that's what we mean when we talk about hierarchy and emphasis. Emphasis, right? Hierarchy meaning the decision of what's more important and what's less important. Emphasis meaning the way artists tell us one thing is we should pay more attention to versus another thing. So that's the homework assignment. That is homework number 1. And then lastly, on a separate Bristol board, we have, which I will also hand out to you, right? This Bristol board and this one here I will hand out to you. And both 11 by 14. Now on this one, you could do a horizontal or a vertical. It's totally up to you. And you need to come up with, let's see, I'm going to get my graphite. You need to come up with some composition. I'm going to come up with an idea right here. Some composition and it can involve a shaped border if you want, right? It doesn't have to be purely rectangular. It could be a shaped arrangement, which is what I'm thinking about right here. And in this composition, you need some area where you have one texture pattern. Let's go back to that kind of loopy figure 8 kind of motif. And some part where it's really dominated by a different texture pattern. Let's go with this classic hatchback thatch kind of a texture pattern, right? And then some location where those two textures collide, intersect, and mix. And then also you need to create the impression that where those two texture patterns meet, that something new is created. How you do that can be in any number of ways, right? I just gave a possible way, but I drew it real light, so it's going to be hard to see on the video. But the main point is that it just needs to fit those rules. It needs to come out of the ideas you developed for your grid and come out of the ideas that you developed for your sketchbook, but then where you try to put all that together and try to have some more specific communication goals. The communication goals are that you have to create the idea that one texture is really dominant in one area, one texture is really dominant in another, that they intersect, and where they intersect something new is created, and then also the sense of that there is grid structure and order in some place, but then the grid breaks down. Okay, all right, that's it. Thank you very much.